Before we talk about love, we need to talk about the things that destroy it. Because not every sin in a relationship deserves forgiveness. Some behaviors don't just hurt you, they dismantle your identity one small piece at a time. Most people ignore the early signs, the lies you let slide, the jokes that humiliate you, the manipulative guilt that twists your emotions. You tell yourself it's nothing. You tell yourself everyone goes through this. But listen, every time you accept what should be unforgivable, you teach them your boundaries are optional. You teach them your dignity is negotiable. These actions are not mistakes, they're patterns, and patterns are predictions. When someone lies to control your reality, mocks you to win an audience, or uses guilt to keep you afraid to leave, that's not love. That's psychological warfare dressed up as devotion. And if you don't draw the line, eventually they'll erase it for you. Today, we expose the behaviors you should never tolerate, no matter how much you think you love them.
Some partners don't raise their voice and they don't hit. Instead, they cross invisible lines, the boundaries that keep two people separate, healthy, and whole. And the scariest thing? They'll tell you they're doing it because they care too much. Boundary violation doesn't always look dramatic. It can look like, "Let me see your phone just to feel secure." Or, "I checked your messages because I was worried." Or, "I followed your location because I love you." But love without respect is not love. It's ownership wrapped in affection. It usually starts subtly. They ask who you were texting, then what you were laughing at, then who commented on your post. You notice their tone, a quiet edge, but you brush it off. One day, they know things you never told them. They reference conversations they shouldn't know about. You ask how, and hear the casual confession. "I looked through your stuff. Don't make a big deal." Suddenly, your privacy is not a right. It's a privilege they believe they can revoke. I once advised someone whose partner accidentally discovered her passwords. Later, she found a tracking app hidden in her settings, installed without her knowledge. When confronted, the partner replied, "If you weren't hiding anything, you wouldn't care." That logic sounds convincing when you're scared of losing someone. But here's the truth. Privacy isn't about secrets. It's about space to breathe. Healthy relationships are not surveillance states. Another boundary violation appears in the form of emotional interrogation. Who was there? How long were you gone? Why didn't you answer the second I called you? Every unanswered text becomes an investigation. Every delayed response becomes a trial. Over time, you stop seeing friends. You skip hobbies. You cancel plans, not because you want to, but because the cost of peace feels too high. That's how isolation begins, not with orders, but with exhaustion. People who bulldoze boundaries often justify it with dramatic language. "I just love you more intensely. I'm passionate. I'm protective." But passion without permission is control. Protection without consent is policing. And here's the hidden warning sign. People who cross boundaries with phones, friends, and conversations will eventually cross boundaries with your body, your identity, and your future. It never stops where it starts. Healthy relationships honor the parts of your life that don't belong to them. But boundary violations often escalate into something even darker. A behavior society excuses far too easily, even though it leaves scars that grow deeper over time. There's a line many people don't recognize until it's been crossed. The moment frustration becomes force. Physical aggression isn't just about bruises, it's about control. It's the silent message behind the shove, the slammed door, the fist through drywall. I'm willing to use fear to win. It rarely begins with a punch. Instead, it tiptoes in with gestures we're trained to minimize. A grab of the wrist during an argument, standing too close, chest puffed out, throwing objects near you, not at you, punching walls to let off steam. You tell yourself it wasn't directed at you, technically, but physics doesn't lie. If they can hit the wall beside your face, they can hit you. I once helped someone who excused every escalation. First, it was a snatched phone. Then a door slammed inches from her hand. Then a glass shattered on the floor, just missing her legs. When the day finally came where his hand connected with her cheek, she was shocked, but anyone watching from the outside wasn't. The signs were marching in formation long before impact. Here's the part many people miss. Genuine loss of control doesn't happen selectively. If someone truly can't help their rage, they'd lash out at coworkers, supervisors, police officers. But abusers don't lose control. They aim it at the safest target, the person most likely to forgive them. Afterward comes the ritual. Tears, promises, it'll never happen again. Maybe even gifts and romantic gestures. But apologies without boundaries are like apologies typed in disappearing ink. Every forgiven act of aggression becomes permission. The shove becomes a slap. The slap becomes a punch. The punch becomes a hospital visit. Abuse grows the same way weeds do, quietly, while you're busy explaining them away. And yet the world is quick to offer excuses. They were drunk. They're stressed. They didn't mean it. Alcohol doesn't create violence. It removes the mask. Stress doesn't invent cruelty. It exposes character. Meaning well doesn't erase harm. Love should never require fear to function. Healthy partners can argue passionately without ever making you flinch. They walk away to cool down. They breathe instead of break things. They choose calm over intimidation. If someone raises a hand to win, they've already lost the right to stay. But it doesn't end here. Physical aggression is often followed by another form of control, one most people mistake for responsibility, unity, or trust. It's subtler, quieter, and just as deadly. Not every behavior in a relationship deserves forgiveness. Some actions don't just hurt you, they slowly erase who you are. When someone lies repeatedly, humiliates you in front of others, or uses guilt to control your emotions, that's not love. That's domination disguised as affection. Real love protects your peace, respects your boundaries, and never uses fear to keep you close. If someone makes you feel smaller every day, listen to that feeling. You are not crazy. You are being controlled. The bravest thing you can do is walk away before you lose yourself completely. Some wounds don't leave bruises. They don't slam doors or shatter glass. Instead, they whisper. They guilt. They twist your empathy into a leash. Emotional manipulation is one of the most invisible and most damaging behaviors in relationships because it feels like love on the surface but change you underneath. Manipulators don't ask for understanding, they demand it. They don't communicate feelings, they weaponize them. It starts with emotional blackmail. If you leave me, I'll have nothing. If you really cared, you'd do this. You're the only one who can fix me. Suddenly, their happiness becomes your responsibility. Their sadness becomes your fault. You start apologizing for things you never did, promising things you can't provide, and shrinking your needs to keep them from spiraling. Manipulators are not impulsive, they're strategic. They observe you. They learn your soft spots, your fear of abandonment, your desire to help, your guilt around saying no. Then they push those exact buttons with surgical precision. I once worked with someone who couldn't end a toxic relationship because every time they tried, their partner threatened to harm themselves. At first, It sparked panic, then pity, then obligation. It took months for them to realize that love built on fear isn't love. It's hostage-taking. Here's the painful truth. Someone who truly cares about you would never make you responsible for their emotional stability. Love isn't a cage disguised as devotion. Another manipulative tactic is manufactured crises. They start arguments right before your big meeting, your exam, your family event. Why? Because chaos keeps you off balance. When you feel unstable, you cling to the only constant, them. Then there's the favorite tool of emotional manipulators. They'll twist events until you question your memory. Their goal isn't to win the argument, it's to make you doubt your own mind. Once you're no longer sure what's real, they can control the narrative completely. Healthy partners don't require fear to earn compliance. They communicate, they regulate themselves, they invite choice, never demand it. But emotional manipulation rarely stands alone. It almost always escalates into another tactic, invading your privacy, monitoring your friendships, and crossing lines while calling it love. And that pattern is far more common than most people want to admit.
Most people think abuse shows up with shouting and slammed doors, but one of the most destructive behaviors wears a mask. Public embarrassment wrapped in jokes. At first, it sounds harmless. A teasing comment, a playful nudge, an oops story told at the dinner table. You laugh awkwardly, cheeks burning, while everyone else chuckles. You tell yourself, it's not that serious. But slowly, the laughter starts sounding like agreement. This pattern is dangerous because it hides in plain sight. It's the partner who shares your insecurities at parties for fun, the person who rolls their eyes when you speak, the one who corrects you mid-sentence to prove you don't know what you're talking about. It's the snide remark about your cooking, your weight, your dreams, always delivered with a grin, always just joking. When you finally confront them, the script is predictable. You're too sensitive. That's not what I meant. You can't take a joke. Suddenly, the pain becomes your fault. Here's the truth. Humor isn't supposed to be a weapon. Jokes should never punch downward. When someone repeatedly makes you the spectacle, they're not trying to be funny. They're signaling to everyone in the room that your dignity is negotiable. I worked with someone whose partner constantly minimized him. At home, she criticized his job, his fashion, even the way he spoke. In public, she would retell his mistakes for laughs, exaggerating the details, adding little twists to make him look foolish. Eventually, he stopped talking in groups. The humiliation became background noise. Years later, after leaving, he said something heartbreaking. I didn't realize how quiet I'd become. I thought I was just introverted, but I was conditioned to shrink. That's the damage. Not the story itself, but the erosion of identity. Studies show that contempt, eye rolls, sarcasm, belittling is the single strongest predictor of relationship collapse. Why? Because contempt isn't frustration, it's superiority. Once someone sees you as beneath them, respect is already gone. Healthy partners protect your image in public. They make you feel taller, not smaller. They brag about you, not your failures. But humiliation doesn't act alone. It often pairs with something even more sinister, emotional manipulation dressed as love, a psychological trap that rewires the nervous system in ways most people never see coming.
But systematic deception is only the beginning. There's another behavior many overlook, one that feels small in the moment, but destroys you in public.
there's a quiet conversation almost nobody dares to bring into the light. We live in a culture obsessed with working it out, with turning the other cheek, with telling ourselves that love means tolerating anything. People repeat phrases like, everyone makes mistakes, until they start believing that every behavior deserves another chance. But the harsh truth is this: some actions don't just wound love, they bury it. Some behaviors are so corrosive that forgiving them isn't compassion, it's slow-motion self-betrayal. Let's be clear. This isn't a guide to bitterness, revenge, or walking away over minor flaws. Every relationship has friction, misunderstandings, and imperfect moments. But there's a difference between human mistakes and patterns designed to break you down. There are lines that should never be crossed, and once they are, pretending everything is fine becomes an act of self-abandonment. The first unforgivable pattern is habitual deception. Not the small, awkward lies that come from trying to protect someone's feelings. I'm talking about the person who constructs a second life behind your back. They lie about where they are, who they've been talking to, why they're late, how they spend money. And when confronted, they don't apologize, they perform. They shape a story to keep you calm long enough to repeat the behavior. I once worked with someone who brushed off early dishonesty. Little fibs about prices, mixed up schedules, forgotten texts. It seemed harmless, almost irritatingly normal, until one day everything unraveled. A hidden account, a second number, private online profiles, debt that could swallow a family whole. Lies weren't the problem, they were the proof of something darker. Total disregard for his reality. People who lie chronically follow the same script. They start tiny to test your response. You hesitate to call it out. You don't want to seem dramatic. That hesitation becomes permission. Slowly, the lies grow teeth. Soon, you find yourself debating what counts as dishonesty instead of asking why truth disappeared in the first place. Here's the part nobody teaches. When someone makes lying their default language, they're telling you that your trust is cheap. And each lie you accept teaches them exactly how little effort they need to invest. Because trust is not rebuilt by promises, it's rebuilt through proof.